Good day, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is. Here right now it's evening. I just got back from Wednesday evening service, and I'm doing this video on the creation. And this is page 17 in what I've written so far. And we're picking up there back to the two trees in the midst. All trees are given for food except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Man learned the good and the evil, and most often chooses to do the evil. See my video on O Wretched Man That I Am. Whatever the fruit growing on this tree has a deadly poison that will eventually take your life and breath from the earth. Then your dirty body will decompose back to the dust of the earth from which God made man. The judge shows up and the trial begins. Call your first witness, Adam. I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. The judge replies, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? Adam, that woman that you gave me, she gave to me, and I did eat. Judge to the woman Eve, what is this that thou hast done? The woman, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. The judge to the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this dragon lost his feet, became a snake that slithers across the ground. What have you lost in your sin? Judge to the woman, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. At least that's the way it was supposed to be started. Judge to Adam, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Wow. Are you looking forward to your return to the dirt? Page 18. Eve then is the mother of all living mankind. God then took an animal and made for Adam and Eve coats of skin. Their fig leaves were not enough. man now is as God, knowing good and evil. Therefore they that they take not the tree of life and live forever, we will evict them from the garden out of the eastern gate. He then placed at the gate cherubims with a flaming sword to keep them out and away from the tree of life. And that's the end of Genesis chapter 3. And moving on down to page 19, Genesis chapter 4. The third word in chapter 4 is the word no. That's a polite way of saying the obvious about conception. The name, the son Cain. Eve then had brother Abel. Abel became a shepherd, and Cain an husbandman. There's nothing said in the text where God told Adam, Eve, Cain, or Abel to bring an offering to God. But Cain and Abel each bring an offering. Abel brings from his flock of sheep, and Cain brings of the fruit of the ground. Abel is accepted, but Cain is not accepted. Preachers have repeatedly said the rejection of Cain's sacrifice was because it was not a blood sacrifice. Again, there's nothing in the text about blood sacrifices. Later, under the law, first fruits, offerings, and all the tithes of the field are commanded. See Deuteronomy 18:4. A feast of celebration is made both at the beginning of harvest, Exodus 23:16 and 34:22, and at the end of harvest, Exodus 23:19. For more details, take TNU course CE 150 on all the tithes. Consider God's response to Cain. Why art thou wroth? Why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. The issue is not whether the sacrifice was blood or not. The issue was sin. Cain had murder in his heart and therefore killed his brother out in the field. The word brother is in the Bible 367 times. Are you your brother's keeper? 1 John 3:9. Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin, because he is born of God. In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. Jude 11. Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the heir of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. Where are you doing your best? or should I say worse. Matthew 5:24. Leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, then come and offer thy gift. So then we find God saying, where is Abel thy brother? And Cain said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Liar. Not telling the truth one iota. God always sees the blood. The first bloodshed was to make coats of skin, and out is the blood of Abel. Blood is in the Bible 447 times in 41 books of the 66 in the Bible. The next appearance of blood is in Genesis 9:4. Page 20. Cain and his farmland are now cursed. The fruitfulness of his farming is destroyed over sin in the flesh. Cain then becomes a fugitive and a vagabond wherever he goes. He has lost his occupation. For his protection of life, God gives Cain a special mark for others to keep their hands off. The lineage of Cain follows with cattlemen, musicians, and craftsmen in brass and iron. One man in the lineage is Lamech. He tells his family that he has killed a man to his own destruction. He speaks of Cain and the vengeance which is to come upon him as 7 times greater. The word 7 times is in the Bible text 35 times. Consider the 7 times years that passed over Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4:16-32. Romans 12:19. Dear beloved, avenge not yourself, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Once again, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she bare Seth. Seth has Enos, and I'm going to have to do something about that beep. That's every time I get a text, that thing goes off. I have to stop it. At this time, men begin to call on the name of the Lord. This time frame brings us to about the year BC 3850, depending on who is doing the guessing. Take note that I use the correct time marker as BC, as before Christ. Bible believers do not use BCE. Obviously, this is calling on God did not last long, which we see coming in chapter 6. That's the end of Genesis chapter 4. It makes a good stopping place for this video section, and we will pick it up next. And at page 21, Genesis chapter 5. God bless your continued studies of creation. Recording again with creation, page 21, and Genesis chapter 5. And it starts with the words, this is the book of the generations of Adam. And it says, in the day God created man, number 1. 2, in the likeness of God. 3, male and female. 5, God called them Adam. No arguments are given, no discussion. God did the creating of the man and the woman. After 130 years past, Adam has another son and calls him Seth. Adam then lives another 800 years, begetting sons and daughters. Adam dies at the age of 930. Seth lives for 105 years and begets Enos. Seth then lives another 807 years, having more sons than daughters. Seth dies at the age of 912. Enos lives 90 years and begets Canaan. Enos lives another 815 years, begetting sons and daughters. Enos dies at the age of 905. Canaan lived only 70 years when he begat Mahalalel. Canaan then lived another 840 years. Canaan dies at the age of 910. Mahalalel lives 65 years, bearing Jared. Mahalalel lives then another 830 years, begetting sons and daughters. Mahalalel dies at the age of 95. Jared lives 62 years and begets Enoch. Jared lives on for another 800 years, bearing sons and daughters. All the days of Jared are 962 years. Enoch, he lives 65 years and begets Methuselah. Enoch has chosen to walk with God. After another 300 years, Enoch has many sons and daughters. The days of Enoch on the earth were 365 years, the number of days in our year. In Enoch's walk with God, he is so righteous that God takes him out of the picture. Another follower of God who escaped the bonds of earth without dying was Elijah, 2 Kings 2:11. And it came to pass, as they went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. What a way to go. The chariots of God show up from time to time. The word is used 113 times. 2 Kings 7:6. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots, and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said one to another, Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. What a sound. Page 22. 2 Kings 6:17. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Psalm 68:17. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them as in Sinai, in the holy place. Isaiah 66:15. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. Methuselah lives 782 years, begetting sons and daughters. All the days of Methuselah were 969 years. His son Lamech lived 182 years and begat Noah. They thought this was a special child, saying he would comfort them in their having to work and sweat for bread under the curse. Did not do him much good. Lamech lived another 595 years, begetting sons and daughters. His life ended after 777 years. 3 times 7. Is there any significance in that number? 777. Noah lived for 500 years, during which he had my 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So ends the generations of Adam for the first millennium of mankind on this earth. Final thought. Considering this first 1,000 years is a failure in mankind, does that set the timetable for God's future plans back? In calculating the end of the 6-day work week, is the millennium time button reset? Think on these things. End of Genesis chapter 5. Page 23, Genesis chapter 6. Following the command to multiply and replenish the earth, men do just that. In process, they give birth to good-looking daughters, 1. The sons of God come down to take a look and like what they see, 2. This is the first unauthorized marital integration. The sons of God are angels, and their place and conduct is to be in heaven unless given orders by the commander-in-chief to assist one of his human creatures. God recessed the time clock for 120 years. How long will your time clock go before it dies? It is the ball of fire of the enactment of Romans chapter 7. God's spirit and that of man will henceforth be at odds one against the other. While the time clock is on the run, the sons of God cohabit with the daughters of men. The outcome is the children as half-breed demonic humanoids of giant stature. Verse 4 puts it this way: there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. These offsprings are on earth before the flood and also after the flood. After the flood of Noah, these giants appear from Joshua through Samuel, the Kings and Chronicles, and on to Job. Giant singular is listed 8 times, whereas giants plural is listed 13 times. Meditate on that one. We know at least one by name whom David killed, Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:4 and verse 23. Chapter 21 and verse 9. Chapter 22 verse 10. 2 Samuel 21:19. 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5. That is a list of 6 times. He is 6 cubits tall. In 1 Chronicles 20, Goliath's brother is killed. He has 6 fingers and 6 toes on each hand and foot. Are you getting the number 6? Other names are Gog and Sihon. Are there other names? Look at the names listed in Deuteronomy 1 and 2. Anakims, Emims, Zamzummims, Horims, Avims, Caphtoriums, Arba, just to name a few. These are called mighty men or renowned. In Genesis 10, Nimrod is called a mighty hunter or mighty one in the earth. Can you make the connection? What can these fallen demons do? Evidence is given in Job chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 1, verse 6, they have access to God in heaven, along with Satan. Satan gets God to remove the protection hedge from Job and gives him, Satan, free access. God allows Satan to have Job's stuff. The demons enter a band of Sabians and they kill off the servants and steal the asses. Then the demons call down fire from heaven and burn up the sheep and the servants. Next, the demons enter a band of Chaldeans and kill more servants and steal the camels. Then, as if that weren't enough, they create a storm and destroy the house where all Job's children were and killed them all. In chapter 2, Satan convinces God to let him have Job's physical body. God allows, but stops at the point of death. Satan covers Job with boils. To add to the menu, Job's good friends are called upon to chide with Job at his present circumstances. Can you think of other places where demons inflicted themselves upon mankind? Page 24. Back to Genesis 6:5. This first millennium of humans has given themselves over to wickedness, where every imagination of his thoughts is only evil. This is now a case where God decides to repent over his creation. It grieves his heart. Therefore, he makes the choice to destroy man. There's no mention in the text of destroying the fallen angels, but check 2 Peter 2:4, where they are in chains of darkness until judgment day. Again, I asked, did God reset his prophetic time clock? In the midst of all this evil, one man stands for righteousness. He receives a full measure of the grace of God. Noah is called just and perfect in his generations. Noah is 600 years old when he enters the ark. If a generation is 100 years, then he lived through 6 generations. That is a long time to live righteously in a wicked community. How are you doing in your community? It should be evident that Noah knew how to be a good father, for his 3 sons are included in God's plan of salvation, along with their wives. They have chosen to live the righteous life in the middle of a generation totally corrupt and given to violence. The evil vapor of this conduct has reached up to heaven, and God says, enough is enough. Noah, build a big boat, which we'll call an ark. It will be your Ark of the Covenant. The architecture of the ark is given by God in all its details, just as the plans for the tabernacle and temple were given to Moses and Solomon. See Hebrews 8:5. That's a good stopping place. We will pick it up next. God is now going to end life. Greeting once more. We're continuing our recording of our article on creation, And this is page 25. And this is chapter 7. The Lord God acknowledges the righteousness of Noah in his generation and instructs him in loading the ark. Of all beasts and birds, Noah is to load 7 couples of each species of male and female. Of animals, God has called clean. Unclean beasts and birds only get one set of male and female. The necessity of emphasizing the sexes will become apparent after the flood is over. This loading needs to be done in the next 7 days before the rain begins. Noah accomplishes this in his 600th year of age, and the rain begins. Noah, wife, 3 sons and their wives, 8 persons saved out of all the population of the heavens and earth at this date, approximately 2319 BC, in the age of Arius, covering from 2370 to 210 BC, under the sign of the Lamb. See course NS 601, Job's Nazareth. Once everything is in the ark, God shuts the door. See Matthew 25:10, where the Lord shuts the door. It is now the 600th year and the 2nd month and the 17th day, and God opens the windows of heaven, thaws the frozen face of the deep, and floods the universe for 40 days and 40 nights. For the earth, that is rain coming down at 7 inches per minute. It will take that much water to cover over the highest mountain. 15 cubits above the highest mountain did the rain cover over the whole earth. Too bad scientists cannot take this into account when calculating the geological timetable of Earth. The ark floats with Noah and family safely inside. Outside, everything that breathes dies. Matthew 7:25-27. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. In all the waters of heaven prevailed for 150 days. How would you do locked in the boat for all these days? All the animals were, in our terminology, domesticated and ate vegetation. Some are turned to blood later. We have seen to this point in the age of the earth that God flooded the earth's water twice. That would have a huge impact on geological science, would it not? This is the end of Genesis chapter 7 with 24 verses. I have written at this time 25 pages of notes. Have you learned anything yet? End of Genesis chapter 7. Page 26, Genesis chapter 8. After sufficient water has flooded the earth, God recalls the waters back to above the firmament to refreeze and closes the windows of heaven. God sends a great wind to blow off the earth to aid in returning the water from above the firmament. It is now the 7th month and the 17th day, and the ark comes to rest on Mount Ararat. The water continues to evaporate unto the first day of the 10th month. Now the tops of the mountains can be seen. Verse 6 adds another 40 days. When Noah opens the window of the ark, he sends out a raven. The raven went to and fro until the waters dried enough for that bird. The combination of the words to and fro are given in the Bible 25 times. Makes a good word study. See Course Bible 611, Spiritual Messages, Satan Going to and Fro. Next on the menu of birdwatch is a dove. The dove flies around but finds no place of rest, so returns to the ark. After another 7 days, Noah sends the dove again. At eventime, the dove returns with an olive leaf. This is an indication that the waters had dried off the earth. Noah waits another 7 days, a week, and again sends forth the dove. This time the dove does not return. Noah has now come to the 601st year, of the 1st month and the 1st day. Noah takes a look and sees dry ground. Entering into the 2nd month on the 27th day, the flood of earth is now dry. Verse 14, or 2 times 7, a perfect witness. Now Noah, family, and all the beasts are released to, as it were, a new earth. At verse 20, Noah builds an altar and takes every clean beast and fowl and made an offering unto the Lord. An interesting question is, how did Noah know which beast or fowl were clean and unclean? The list from God is not given until Leviticus chapter 11. How did Noah know? How did Cain and Abel know to make an offering of their work? My assumption is that God and man were still talking to one another until they rebelled in Genesis 6. God accepts the offering and makes the declaration of such a water curse. I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. End of Genesis chapter 8. Page 27. Genesis chapter 9. Chapter 9 opens with the same commandment given to Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. And God blessed them and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Both commands contain the same word, replenish. Same word, same meaning. Put back what was taken away. Which brings up the question, do you believe that there was something on earth before Genesis 1:3? when God started the first day. The whole of animal life is given into the hand of man. They all will now be installed with a fear of man and will now be carnivorous and bloodthirsty. People punishment will be tried by the beasts of the wild and appointed people judges. It will be blood for blood. If you shed the blood of a man in murder, then under judgment your blood shall be shed. This is brought to bear on the fact that man was created in the image of God. Do you know what the image of God looks like? Hebrews 1:1. God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds, who being the brightness of his glory, and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. Be fruitful, given in Scripture 9 times. 7 are in Genesis, with 1 in Jeremiah 23:3, and 1 in Hosea 13:15. The fourth one is this one in chapter 9, verse 7 says, "And you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein." Beginning with verse 8, God brings in a new covenant for the seed of Noah. You are of the seed of Noah and his 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. A new covenant is that man and all creatures will not be totally destroyed by flood waters. The sign for the sign seekers is 7 colored rainbow. In the cloud, after the rainstorm has come upon the earth, the 7 colors of the rainbow are red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, and violet. That is 7, not 6. 7 is God's number for completion or the end, whereas 6 is the number for man as he was created on the 6th day. It also leads to the mark of the beast, which is 666. The rainbow is an everlasting covenant between God and the earth and all its inhabitants. Now, Genesis 9:18 begins the rest of the story from Noah to the last man standing, when the present heaven and earth are replaced and the order to replenish is once again declared. 9 is 3 plus 3 plus 3, the same as the Trinity. Page 28. 18 is 3 times 6, or 666, which is the mark of a man and the number of his name, Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beasts, which is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Ham, Shem, and Japheth, after this, begin the population of peoples, tongues, and nations of the whole earth, and any admixture thereof. So then, after about 5,000 years of reproduction and race mixing, what are you? What then is the beginning of this new world order? Noah becomes a husbandman of a vineyard. He learns how to make fermented hooch and gets drunk, ending up naked in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, enters the tent and sees his father naked. He tells Shem and Japheth, who come in backwards with a blanket and cover their father's nakedness. We are now at Genesis 9:24. The number 24 is 2 times 12, or 4 times 6. 2 is God's number for a true witness. 12 is God's number for the month of the year. The 12 tribes, the 12 disciples, or the number of a man on a jury. The number 4 represents the kingdom. It is expressed in the 4 Gospels, especially the Gospel of Matthew, and we already know 6 is the number for man. Verse 24, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. This is the verse many people hate and others use to justify slavery. Blessing 26 goes to Shem, leading to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes, and eventually to Jesus the Christ of Nazareth. Japheth is greatly enlarged and consumes the larger portion of the land of the earth. Canaan, the son of Ham, is to be a servant of both the descendants of his brothers. That is what these verses say, whether you like them or not. Just remember that Jesus is the true and final liberator of all men. Chapter 9 ends with the death of Noah at 950 years of age, and he died. End of Genesis chapter 9. Next, chapter 10. Creation, Genesis chapter 10, page 29 in our study. Genesis chapter 5 began with the book of the generations of Adam. Chapter 10 begins as, Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. Verse 2 to 5 lists the seed of Japheth, including Gomer and Magog. These two have a future in the final plan of God. Verse 5 refers to these as the Gentiles divided into tongues, families, and nations. Verses 6 to 20 provide the lineage of Ham through Canaan, all the families that follow and are called the Canaanites. They dwell in the land which God has promised to Abraham. The grandson of Ham is Nimrod, a mighty one in the earth, a hunter skilled with the bow. His sign is the hand raised, extending the 2 fingers used in the function of the bow. Do you know anyone today who uses the sign of 2 fingers? Nimrod's kingdom becomes Babel and extends across Shinar to Nineveh. One of his seed is the Philistines. The Canaanites spread across to Gaza, Sodom, and Gomorrah. Do you see where the seed of Ham is going? Ham's character with his father is carried on with his descendants. What is in the closet of your bloodline? This is the division of Ham by family, tongues, and nations. Verse 21 to 31 is the lineage of Shem, also known as Shemites. To date, they are still insulted with anti-Semitic triads. The seed of Shem is from the Mid-East to the East countries, such countries as India, Indonesia, China, Japan, Korea, and other such eastern countries. At verse 25, a man named Eber has two sons. One he names Peleg because the earth is divided in his day. As is indicated, the continents were at one time one single land mass. It is possible that at this time of Peleg, the plate tectonics began to move the earth apart. The seed of Shem spreads as the others in families, tongues, and nations. The chapter ends in verse 32. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Chapter 10 is the beginning of the kingdoms of this world, with Nimrod in the lead. Nimrod takes that lead, and you can read his kingdom building program in Genesis chapter 11. The end of Genesis chapter 10, Revelation 11:15, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our God and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Page 30. These are the generations of Shem, Genesis 11:10, of Terah, Genesis 11:27, of Ishmael, Genesis 25:12, of Isaac, Genesis 25:19, of Esau, Genesis 36:1, of Jacob, Genesis 37:2, of Aaron and Moses, Numbers 3:1, of Israel, Judges 3:2, of Pharez, Ruth 4:18, of the Hebronites, 1 Chronicles 26:31, from the beginning, Isaiah 41:4, of old, Isaiah 51:9, of Abraham to David, Matthew 1:17, Revelation 7:6-8, of the 12 tribes of Israel, 144,000. And that brings to a conclusion my thoughts and the Word of God on creation, the first 10 chapters of Genesis. Now it is your turn to study the Scriptures and see whether or not you agree or not, whether you believe God's Word or not. Dr. Ken Larley, DeAndre National University, Jacksonville, Florida.